Your Honor, before you finalize anything, I need to speak. My son, Julien, stood up in the back of the courtroom, 18 years old as of 6 weeks ago. And the same day his mother handed me divorce papers with a smile stretched across her face like she'd just won something. Judge Miriam Ashcroft looked up, surprised. This was supposed to be a routine final hearing. Sign the papers. Divide the assets. Close out a 20-year marriage. Nothing complicated. Young man, this is a private proceeding. Who are you? I'm Julian Bishop. The respondent is my father. The petitioner is my mother. His voice was steady. Calm. Nothing like the anxious kid I'd raised. And I have evidence this court needs to hear before any documents are signed. My wife, Renata, was sitting at the petitioner's table beside her attorney. A sharp, unblinking woman named Priya Sethi, who billed $920 an hour, and, from what I'd seen over the past 6 months, was worth every cent. If your goal was to bury someone, Renata's face drained of color. Julien, sit down, she hissed. This doesn't concern you. Actually, Mom, it does. It concerns me more than anyone else in this room. He walked forward, past the rows of gallery seating, past his mother's table, until he was standing directly in front of the judge's bench. In his hand was a small black device, roughly the size of a fountain pen, a voice recorder disguised to look like an ordinary pen. The kind you could order online for less than $60. Your Honor, for the past 3 years I have been recording conversations inside our home. Conversations my mother had when she believed no one was listening. Conversations that document fraud, infidelity, and a coordinated plan to strip my father of everything he has worked for. The courtroom went dead silent. Judge Ashcroft leaned forward. Young man, that is a serious accusation. Do you understand what you're claiming? Yes. Ma'am, I've had 3 years to understand exactly what I'm claiming. Julien, stop this right now. Renata was on her feet, her composure cracking down the middle. Whatever you think you heard, I didn't think I heard anything. Mom, I recorded it. Hours of it. Dates. Times. Names. Dollar amounts. Everything. He held up the pen recorder. Do you want to tell Dad the truth yourself? Or should I just play it for the room? Renata looked at me, then at the judge, then at her lawyer, then at the bailiff stationed near the door. Then she ran. She actually tried to run, grabbed her handbag and lunged for the side exit like she was fleeing a crime scene. The bailiff caught her in 5 long strides, wrapped a hand around her arm, and pulled her back before she'd made it 20 feet. Ma'am, you need to return to your seat. Let go of me. This is ridiculous. My son is lying. Mom, sit down. He guided her, shaking now, back to the petitioner's table. All the polish, all the icy confidence she'd walked in with, had evaporated. What remained underneath was something desperate and small. Judge Ashcroft studied Julien with new interest. I think you had better tell me what's on that recording. Mr. Bishop. Julien pressed play, and my entire marriage came apart in front of me. One sentence at a time. Let me back up. My name is Nathaniel Bishop. Everyone calls me Nate. I'm 54 years old. I've lived in Tucson, Arizona for most of my adult life, working as a senior systems analyst for a logistics software company. Not glamorous work, but stable. The kind of job that lets you buy a modest house, raise a kid, and plan for a retirement you never quite get to enjoy because you're too busy funding everyone else's life. I met Renata Cole in the spring of 2003 at an industry leadership conference in Phoenix. She was 27, sharp-witted, working in marketing for a regional bank. I was 31, recently promoted, feeling for the first time like my life had some shape to it. We dated for 2 years, got engaged, married in the fall of 2005. For a while, things were good, or at least I believed they were good. Renata wanted a house in a nicer part of town, so we stretched ourselves to buy one. She wanted to stay home when Julian was born in 2007, so we made it work on my salary alone. She wanted him in a private academy once he hit middle school, so I picked up freelance consulting on weekends to cover the tuition. I gave her whatever she asked for, everything I could scrape together, and somehow it was never enough. The first time I suspected something was wrong was in the fall of 2020. Julian was 13. I'd come home early from work. A client call had been canceled and found Renata in the bedroom. Phone pressed to her ear. Voice dropped low. The moment she saw me in the doorway, she hung up. Who was that? Just my sister. Except her sister lived in Oregon, and our phone had caller ID. The number on the screen wasn't her sister's. I let it go. Told myself I was being paranoid. Told myself that after 15 years of marriage, I owed her the benefit of the doubt. I was a fool. Looking back, the signs were everywhere. New clothes I didn't remember her buying. Girls' nights that started happening 2, 3 times a week. The way she'd angle her phone away from me when a text came in, like she had something to hide. I didn't want to see it. Didn't want to believe the woman I'd built 2 decades of my life around was lying to my face every single day. So I buried the suspicion and kept working. Kept providing. Kept being the dependable, unremarkable husband she apparently found suffocating. Then came Julian's 18th birthday, August 9th. 2025. We had a small gathering at the house, a handful of relatives, a few of his friends from school. A store-bought cake because none of us could cook to save our lives. Julian had already been accepted into Purdue's mechanical engineering program for the fall. It should have been one of the best days of my life. Instead, it was an ambush. After the guests left, after Julian disappeared upstairs, Renata sat me down at the kitchen table. Nate. I want a divorce. Just like that. No lead up. No warning. No attempt at a conversation. What? Why? I'm not happy. Haven't been happy for years. And now that Julian's 18, I don't have to keep pretending. Pretending, Renata. What are you talking about? She smiled. Not a sad smile. Not even a guilty one. A triumphant one. I've been planning this for a long time. Nate. Waiting until Julian was an adult so custody wouldn't complicate things. Now I can finally have the life I actually deserve. The life you deserve. I've given you everything I have. You've given me a beige house in a beige suburb with a husband who's married to his laptop. That's not a life. That's a holding pattern. She slid a folder across the table. Sign these. Priya says if we keep it amicable, it moves faster. I looked down at the papers, then up at the woman I'd loved for 20 years. And I didn't recognize either. I need time to think. Think all you want. I'm done. Nate, I'm finally done. She got up and walked out, leaving me alone at the table with a folder of legal paperwork and a chest that felt like it had been hollowed out with a spoon. That's when Julian came downstairs. Dad, you okay? Your mother wants a divorce. He sat across from me, and his face wasn't shocked. It was resigned, like he'd been braced for this moment for a long time. I know. Dad, I've known for a while. What do you mean? He glanced toward the stairs, making sure she wasn't in earshot. There's something I need to tell you. Something I should have told you a long time ago. But I need you to trust me. And I need you to not do anything until the timing is right. Julianne. What are you talking about? I've been recording Mom for 3 years. I know everything she's done. Everything she's been hiding. He pulled out his phone and showed me a folder, hundreds of audio files, each one labeled with a date. When this goes to court, I'm going to take her apart. But we have to do it right. We have to let her believe she's winning until the very last second. I stared at my son, this 18-year-old kid, quietly building a case against his own mother for 3 years without a word to anyone. Why? Why would you do this? Because she's been lying to you. Dad. Lying. Stealing. Cheating. And somebody had to protect you. That night, Julian told me everything. And what I learned made me physically sick. The affair had started in 2020 with a man named Trevor Hastings, a senior partner at a real estate law firm. Renata had done marketing work for years earlier. They'd reconnected at a charity gala, exchanged numbers, and what began as innocent catch-up coffee turned into something else within a few months. Julian discovered it by accident, homesick from school one afternoon. When he heard voices from the master bedroom, his mother's voice, and a man's who wasn't his father, he didn't confront her, didn't tell me. Instead, he started paying attention. I was just a kid, he told me that night. I figured maybe it was a one-time thing. Maybe she'd stop. She didn't stop. It just kept going. By the time he was 15, Julian had begun recording. He started with his phone, tucking it into a bookshelf or under a couch cushion in the living room when Renata thought she was alone. Lauder. He bought that pen-shaped recorder online. Small enough to clip inside a jacket pocket or leave sitting in a mug on the counter without anyone noticing. He captured phone calls with Trevor, conversations with friends where she laughed about her double life, conversations with Priya Sethi about the divorce she was already quietly planning. 3 years of evidence. Hundreds of hours of recordings. She talks to herself sometimes, Julian said. Rehearses what she's going to tell you. How she's going to spin things if you ever find out. I got all of it. Why didn't you tell me sooner? Because you would have confronted her. And she would have denied everything. And it would have been your word against hers, and her lawyer would have shredded you. I needed to wait until I was 18. Until I could testify as an adult. Until we could get her somewhere, she couldn't lie her way out of it. My son, my boy, he'd been carrying this for 3 years. Quietly gathering proof, while I sat across the dinner table from his mother every night. Completely oblivious. There's more. Dad, it's not just the affair. What else? She's been stealing from you. She's got accounts. You don't know about money. She's been siphoning out of the joint checking, out of your retirement fund, wherever she could reach. She's been building a stash so she can leave and start over with Trevor without missing a beat. How much? At least $612,000 that I can actually document. Probably more. $612,000. Money I'd spent 2 decades saving. Money meant for retirement. For emergencies. For our son's future. Gone. Siphoned away by the woman who slept beside me every single night. And there's one more thing, Julian said, his voice dropping. The worst thing? What could possibly be worse than this? Mom and Trevor have been planning something. I recorded them talking about it about 8 months ago. They want to make sure you walk away from this divorce with nothing. They've been coaching her lawyer to hide assets, fabricate claims, paint you as the villain, so the judge hands her everything. What kind of claims? Julian looked at me with something close to fear. She's going to accuse you of abuse. Dad, she's got fake medical paperwork. Coach statements from friends who'll swear they saw you be controlling. It's all fabricated. But she's been laying the groundwork for months. The room tilted. My wife was preparing to accuse me of domestic abuse to torch my reputation, my career, my entire life, so she could leave with everything and disappear into a new one with her lover. And she'd filed for divorce on our son's birthday. believing she'd timed it flawlessly. She had no idea her own son had been preparing for this moment for 3 years. "So what do we do?" I asked. Julian's smile turned cold. "Older than 18 years should allow. We let her think she's winning. We go through the process. Let her commit to her lies in writing. In depositions. On the record. Then, at the final hearing. When it's too late for her to change course, we play the recordings. That's the plan. That's justice. Dad. The kind she never saw coming. The next 6 months were torture. I had to sit across from Renata in mediation sessions and listen to her lie with a straight face. Had to watch her lawyer make outrageous demands, while my own attorney, a decent but overmatched man named Walter Doyle, scrambled to keep pace. Renata wanted the house. She wanted 85% of our combined assets. She wanted permanent alimony. And looming in the background, unspoken but ever present, that was the threat of the abuse allegations. She hadn't deployed yet a nuclear option, held in reserve in case I pushed back too hard. I wanted to scream. Wanted to slam the recordings on the table and watch her unravel right there in the mediator's office. But Julian was right. We needed her to commit to the lies fully. In writing, in sworn statements, so that when the truth came out, there'd be no room for her to claim it was misunderstood or taken out of context. She would be exposed as a liar, a thief, and a fraud. On the record, in front of a judge, during those 6 months, I learned more about the woman I'd married than I had in 20 years of living with her. The affair with Trevor wasn't her first. There had been others. Stretching back nearly a decade, one recording captured her laughing to a friend about a man named Roman she'd met at the gym years earlier, joking about how easily she'd fooled me, while I sat at home believing she was at a work retreat. The financial manipulation went even deeper than Julian's early estimates. She'd opened credit cards in my name without telling me, taken out a $47,000 second mortgage on our house, forging my signature on the paperwork, funneled thousands of dollars to Trevor over the years to help cover his own debts, all while I worked overtime to keep our household afloat. By the time the accountant Walter hired finished the full audit, the number had climbed to $875,000, nearly $1 million, quietly bled out of our life together. Julian had recordings of her celebrating it. "Once this divorce is final," she told Trevor in one clip, "Nate's going to be lucky if he can afford a 1-bedroom apartment. And we'll be somewhere with a beach, living the life he could never give me. The life he could never give her. I had given her everything I had. Every extra shift. Every sacrifice. Every compromise. And she'd repaid it with betrayal, on a scale I couldn't fully process even after hearing the evidence with my own ears." The final hearing was scheduled for February 3rd, 2026, 6 months after she'd filed. 6 months of carefully constructed lies stacking on top of each other. Renata walked into that courtroom radiating confidence. As far as she knew, she'd already won. Priya Sethi had outmaneuvered Walter at nearly every turn. The proposed settlement heavily favored her. All that remained was Judge Ashcroft's signature. She had no idea Julian had taken the day off from his summer research position. No idea he was sitting quietly in the gallery with a pen recorder clipped inside his jacket. No idea everything she'd worked toward was about to collapse in real time. The hearing began ordinarily enough. Priya presented the settlement. Walter raised a few token objections that were quickly waved off. Judge Ashcroft looked ready to sign and move on to her next case. Then Julian stood up. "Your Honor, before you finalize anything, I need to speak." And the whole world tilted on its axis. The first recording was from the spring of 2024. Renata, on the phone with Trevor, laying out her plans. "Nate doesn't suspect a thing. He's too busy working to notice me at all. Give it another year and I'll be free of him. We just have to be patient. And the money, Trevor's voice. Tinny through the recorder's small speaker. I moved another 6,500 this month. He never checks the accounts. The man works like a dog and hasn't got the faintest idea where his own money goes. What about the kid Julian? He's oblivious too. Just like his father. Once I'm out, Nate can deal with him. I've done my time as a mother. The recording ended. Judge Ashcroft's face had turned to stone. Is that your voice? Mrs. Bishop. Renata gripped the edge of the table. Knuckles white. That was taken out of context. I was venting to a friend. That was Trevor Hastings. Julian said flatly. Her partner. They've been having an affair since 2020. I have recordings going back 3 years that document the entire thing. This is inadmissible. Priya was on her feet. This is illegal surveillance. Your Honor, Arizona is a one-party consent state. Julian said, calm and prepared. I was present for every one of these conversations. I had the legal right to record them. Judge Ashcroft raised a hand. Counselor, I'm well aware of the recording statutes in this state. These appear to have been legally obtained. She turned back to Julian. What else do you have? Recordings of my mother admitting to financial fraud, opening credit cards in my father's name, forging his signature on mortgage documents, moving money into accounts he doesn't know exist. He pressed play again. Renata's voice filled the courtroom. The second mortgage was the easy part. Nate never reads the paperwork closely. I just told him it was a refinance for a better rate. And he signed wherever I pointed. He has no idea we're $47,000 deeper in debt than he thinks. Another clip. Trevor needed help covering his tax bill. So I pulled $8,200 out of Nate's retirement account. He won't notice until he actually tries to retire. And by then I'll be long gone. Another. The cards are in his name. But I'm the one spending. Once the divorce goes through, those balances become his problem. He'll be paying off my shopping for years. Each recording landed like a blow. A portrait of a woman who had spent years systematically dismantling her husband's financial security while he worked to keep the family afloat. But the worst was still coming. Your Honor, Julian said, there's one more recording you need to hear. It's from 6 months ago. My mother discussing her strategy for these proceedings. He pressed play a final time. Renata's voice. If Nate pushes back at all, I'll pull the abuse card. I've already laid the groundwork, fake medical documentation showing bruising, statements from friends who'll say they saw him be controlling. Priya says it's airtight. Trevor's voice. Will the court actually believe it? Courts always believe the woman, especially with paperwork behind her. By the time we're finished, Nate's going to look like a monster. He'll be lucky to get supervised visits with his own son, let alone a dime of the assets. What if Julian says something defends him? Julian will do what I tell him to do. He's always been closer to me anyway. And if he doesn't cooperate, I'll tell the court he's being manipulated by his father. Parental alienation, I've got that angle covered too. The recording ended. The courtroom was absolutely silent. Judge Ashcroft's expression had shifted from neutral to something close to fury. Mrs. Bishop, you were planning to level false accusations of domestic abuse against your husband. Renata was crying, now real tears. Ugly ones. The tears of someone who'd finally been caught. I was scared. I didn't know what else to do. You were planning to fabricate medical records, coach witnesses into perjury, and commit fraud against this court. It was just talk. I never would have actually. I have the fake medical records. Julian held up a folder. I found them in her desk 2 months ago and photocopied everything. Statements from 3 of her friends, describing incidents that never happened. A falsified report from a doctor who was paid to produce documentation. He handed the folder to the bailiff, who passed it up to the judge. Ashcroft's expression darkened with every page she turned. Mrs. Bishop, these documents describe injuries requiring hospital treatment. Treatment that would leave an official medical record. Can you explain why the formatting on these pages doesn't match records from the facility listed? Can you explain why the physician name doesn't appear in any licensing database? Can you explain why you were preparing to submit fraudulent evidence in my courtroom? Renata had nothing. She looked to her lawyer. Priya Sethi was already closing her briefcase, putting distance between herself and her client. Your Honor, I had no knowledge of any fabricated documentation. My client assured me. We'll address your involvement separately. Counselor. Judge Ashcroft turned to the bailiff. Please ensure Mrs. Bishop does not leave this courtroom. I'm calling a recess to contact the district attorney's office. What I've heard today suggests multiple criminal offenses: fraud, perjury, identity theft, and conspiracy to submit false evidence. The bailiff stepped toward Renata, and that's when she ran, knocked her chair over, shoved past her own attorney, made a desperate lunge for the side exit. She made it about 20 feet before the bailiff caught her. Mom, you need to stay calm. Let go of me. This is a setup. My son is lying. Mom, sit down. It took the bailiff and a second court officer to walk her back to her seat. She was sobbing, mascara streaking down her face, every trace of polish gone. This was the real Renata, desperate, cornered, ugly in a way that had nothing to do with her makeup. Judge Ashcroft watched with barely concealed contempt. Mrs. Bishop, your behavior is noted for the record. This court is in recess. When we reconvene, we will discuss a complete restructuring of this settlement, and you will be speaking with law enforcement regarding potential criminal charges. She banged the gavel. The hearing was over. The consequences were just beginning. The next several months were chaos. The district attorney's office opened a full investigation. The evidence was overwhelming, not just Julian's recordings, but the financial paper trail, the forged documents, and testimony from the friends who'd been recruited to lie. Renata was charged with 9 counts across several categories: fraud, forgery, identity theft, perjury, conspiracy, and attempted subornation of witnesses. Her attorneys tried to negotiate a plea. The DA wasn't interested. She was prepared to destroy an innocent man's life with fabricated abuse allegations. The prosecutor told a local reporter, "She doesn't get to walk away from that quietly." The trial ran 5 weeks. Julian testified for 2 full days, playing recording after recording, walking the jury through how he'd gathered the evidence and what it had cost him to watch his mother lie to his father's face for years while pretending everything was fine. "I knew my dad wouldn't believe me without proof," he said on the stand. He loved her too much, trusted her completely. The only way to actually protect him was to document everything and wait for the right moment. "And you carried this secret for 3 years. Yes, that must have been difficult." It was. But my dad spent 20 years working himself into the ground to give us a good life. The least I could do was spend 3 years protecting him. I cried when he said that. Sitting in the gallery, watching my son testify against his own mother, I didn't try to hide it. This boy I'd raised, who'd watched his family quietly disintegrate and, instead of looking away, had chosen to do something about it. He had saved me. Renata was convicted on 7 of 9 counts. The judge sentenced her to 6 years in state prison, with the possibility of parole after 3. In the civil proceedings that followed, the settlement was completely rewritten. I kept the house. I received 90% of the remaining assets, along with full documentation of the stolen funds, which would be used to calculate restitution for years to come. Trevor Hastings was named as a co-conspirator in several of the financial crimes. He lost his partnership at the law firm. His own wife filed for divorce the moment the story broke. Last I heard, he was working out of a strip mall storefront, handling contract disputes and traffic tickets. The friends who'd agreed to give false statements about abuse were charged with conspiracy to commit perjury. Most received probation, but their names ran in the local paper, and their reputations didn't survive the fallout. The so-called doctor who'd produced the fake medical records lost his license and faced his own charges. Last I heard, he was working as a pharmaceutical rep 2 states away. Everyone who had helped Renata try to destroy me faced some kind of reckoning. Justice. Real justice. The kind you almost never see actually play out in a divorce case. And it happened because an 18-year-old refused to let his mother get away with it. Julian started at Purdue that fall. I drove him out, helped him haul boxes into his dorm, met his roommate. Ordinary father-son stuff, the kind I'd been quietly hoping for since he was small. But nothing felt entirely ordinary anymore. "Dad, you okay?" he asked, as we hauled a mini-fridge up 3 flights of stairs. "I'm fine. Just thinking about Mom." I set the fridge down and looked at my son, this young man who'd grown up faster than he should have, who'd carried a weight no teenager should ever have to carry. "I'm thinking about you. About what you did. 3 years of gathering evidence while pretending everything at home was normal. I did what I had to do. You shouldn't have had to do anything. You were a kid. Protecting me wasn't your job." He shrugged. "Maybe not. But I was the only one who knew the truth. How did you handle it, all those years? Knowing what she was doing. Watching her lie to my face at dinner." Julian was quiet for a while. "It was hard. Really hard. Some days I wanted to just blow it all up and deal with whatever happened. But I knew that wouldn't work. Mom's smart. She would have talked her way out of it. Made me look like a troubled kid making things up. The only way to actually beat her was undeniable proof. 3 years is a long time to keep something like that buried." "Yeah, but you were worth it." "Dad." I pulled him into a hug and held on longer than I probably needed to. "I don't know what I did to deserve a son like you. You showed up. Every single day. You showed up. Worked hard. Provided for us. Never complained. Even when Mom treated you like an afterthought. You're a good man. You deserve better than what she gave you. I just wanted to make sure you finally got it." 2 years have passed since that day in the courtroom. I'm 56 now. Still working at the same company. Though I've scaled back to a normal 40-hour week. Turns out you don't need to grind 60-hour weeks when you're no longer secretly funding someone else's double life. I sold the house last year, too many ghosts in the hallways, and bought a smaller place closer to downtown. Nothing like the home Renata and I shared. I've started dating again. Nothing serious yet. But I've had a few dinners with a woman I met at a community woodworking class. No red flags so far. We're taking it slow. Julian is thriving at Purdue. Made the dean's list both years. He has an internship lined up with an aerospace firm outside Indianapolis for the summer. He's going to be more than okay. We talk every Sunday. He tells me about classes. About friends. About a girl he's been seeing. Normal college conversations, the kind I always hoped we'd get to have. Sometimes his mother comes up. She's eligible for parole review next year, 2 years served of her 6-year sentence. Apparently a model inmate. The parole board sent me a letter asking whether I wanted to submit a statement. I still haven't decided. Part of me wants to let it go entirely. She lost everything: her freedom, her reputation, her son. What more is there to ask for? But another part of me remembers the recordings. The casual cruelty in her voice. The way she laughed about deceiving me for years. The fabricated abuse claims that would have destroyed my life if Julian hadn't stopped her in time. Some things aren't easy to release. I asked Julian what he thought. "I'm not submitting a statement." He said, "She's not worth the energy anymore. You don't care if she gets out early. She'll still be a convicted felon. Still have nothing. Still be the woman who tried to frame her own husband and got caught by her own son. He paused. That's her sentence. Dad. Not the prison time. Living with what she did and how it ended. For the rest of her life. That's what she actually has to carry now. My son. Wise well beyond 18. Maybe too wise for his own good. Do you regret it? I asked him. Recording her. Testifying against her. All of it. He thought about it for a long moment. I regret that it was necessary. I wish I'd had a mother I didn't have to protect you from. I wish our family had actually been what it looked like from the outside. He shook his head. But the recordings themselves, no. I'd do it again without hesitating. His voice firmed. You're my dad. You've always shown up for me. When I found out what she was planning to do to you, I couldn't just stand off to the side and let it happen. Most kids would have stayed out of it. Told themselves it wasn't their business. He smiled faintly. But I'm not most kids. I'm your kid. And you raised me to do the right thing. Even when it's hard. I didn't have an answer for that. So I just told him I loved him. It was enough. One more thing before I close this out. About 6 months ago, I received a letter from Renata. The facility allows correspondence. And apparently she'd decided to write. I almost threw it away, unopened. Curiosity won out. The letter ran 3 pages. I'll spare you most of it, the justifications. The half explanations that weren't really explanations at all. But one paragraph near the end stayed with me. She wrote that she knew I'd never forgive her. And that she wasn't asking me to. She said she'd spent years convincing herself that I was the problem. That I wasn't enough. That she deserved more than the life we'd built. But sitting alone with nothing but time to think, she'd finally understood that the problem had never been me. It had always been her, never satisfied, never able to appreciate what she had. And instead of facing that, she'd chosen to blame me. Cheat. Steal. And try to tear my life apart. She wasn't asking for forgiveness. Just for me to know that she finally understood. Too late. She admitted. Far too late, but she understood. I read it a few times. Then tore the letter up and threw it away. Understanding doesn't undo anything. A realization in a prison cell doesn't erase 20 years of lies. Words on a page don't repair what she tried to do to me. But there was something quietly satisfying in knowing she could no longer hide from the truth of what she'd done that every day for the rest of her life. She'd have to sit with it. That's its own kind of justice. I think about that courtroom sometimes. The moment Julian stood up and everything shifted. The look on Renata's face when she realized her own son had been recording her for 3 years. The way she bolted for the door like she could somehow outrun what was coming. She thought she'd planned it all perfectly, waiting until our son turned 18. Timing the divorce filing on his birthday like some twisted kind of celebration. She never once considered that her own child might be the one to bring the whole thing down. That's the nature of secrets. They only survive as long as nobody's paying attention. Julian was paying attention, and he saved me. If you're watching this and you're in the middle of something similar, a divorce, a betrayal, a partner hiding pieces of themselves, you're only beginning to sense. I want you to hear this. The truth matters. Even when it's painful. Even when part of you wishes you could go back to not knowing. Living in the truth, however hard, will always beat living inside a lie. I spent years believing I had a solid marriage. Believing I was loved. Believing the life we'd built together was real. None of it was. But knowing that, as much as it hurt, is what finally set me free. I'm not questioning my own perceptions anymore. I'm not standing on ground that might collapse under me at any moment. I know exactly what happened. And the truth, however painful, is something solid enough to actually stand on. One last thing. Last week, Julian called with news. Dad, I met someone. Her name's Amber. She's studying architecture. I really like her. That's great. Son, when do I get to meet her? Maybe over winter break. If that's not weird. Why would it be weird? I don't know. Because of everything with Mom. Because of how our family turned out. I thought about how to answer that honestly. Julienne, what happened with your mother wasn't about families in general. It was about her. Her choices. Her deceptions. That doesn't mean you can't build something real with someone else. How do you know it won't end up the same way? You don't. That's the scary part. But you can't let that fear stop you from trying. I paused. The fact that you're even worried about it tells me you're going to be fine. People like your mother don't worry about hurting the people around them. They just do it. You're nothing like that. I hope you're right. I know I'm right. I raised you. He laughed a good sound. A healing sound. Thanks. Dad, I'll bring Amber home for winter break. I think you'll really like her. I'm sure I will. We said our goodbyes. I hung up and sat alone in my quiet house, thinking about the future. My son was in love, building a life of his own. I'm going to be okay despite everything. And so was I. Not because the pain had disappeared, it never fully does, but because the truth had finally set us both free. And sometimes, that's enough. If this story meant something to you, share it with someone who needs the reminder that surviving betrayal is possible. And if you're in the middle of something hard right now, remember, the truth always surfaces eventually. Make sure you're standing on the right side of it when it does.